Hello, all you cosmic travelers and wanderers. This is Darlene Van de Grift and K. Melissa Waterman, inviting you to join us today in our episode of Expansion from Within, Exploring Multidimensionality.
Let me introduce you to my friend and dear colleague, Darlene Van de Grift. She is a lifetime experiencer, a medical intuitive, and a multidimensional mediator for over 35 years. She's also an author, an artist, a teacher, and a mentor for spiritually invested people.
And K. Melissa Waterman is my friend and colleague, and she's an intuitive mentor, a spiritual teacher. She also works with energy on many levels. In the past, Melissa has worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza on his research team.
Join us on our journey of meeting multidimensional beings, exploring what it means to be human, and expanding our spiritual evolution. Hi, Darlene. Here we are again.
Yeah, it's nice to be here this week.
Yeah. So last time we met, we talked about multidimensionality, like exactly what is it. We also talked about how it can help serve humanity. And I thought maybe we could just ask some more questions this week. How's that feel to you?
Sure, that's fine. That feels good.
All right, good. I'll start with one of the questions that we have here. How can we gain access to other dimensions?
Part of the access piece is going to be a big piece is going to be meditation. Mm-hmm. Okay. Learning how to calm the mind down, learning how, and for some people, meditation doesn't mean sitting, because that is something that, they really can't do. They can't calm that brain down enough. So it could be a walking meditation. It's mostly going to probably be in nature. So that, and you don't have earphones in, you don't have earpods, you're not listening to anything, you're really being in the moment, in that access point. And along with the meditation, it's asking questions. Like meditation is one thing where you blank the mind and you just feel and you're present and you be. That's one form of meditation. In accomplishing that and utilizing that, the next step is creating the space so that when you go into a meditation, you ask a question. So you ask something that can be shown to you, or maybe it's a yes and no question. And in that communication, it might not be multidimensional to begin with. It might be more of your right side of your brain that communicates with you, but it's at least a doorway that opens. So you say something that, I want to learn, or I want to know about tomorrow in some way. I want you to tell me how tomorrow is going to go, or anything. And so they show you a river. So all of a sudden you see a river in front of you, or you sense something, because not everybody's visual, right? So you might sense water, you might sense a river, you might sense a dam, right? It's your interpretation of that. It's the way that you start to communicate on another level with learning a language. So whether those are dimensional, right? So you're not really in this dimension getting information that's auditory. Nobody's telling you anything. You have to interpret what's being given to you. And some people will get it visual, or they'll get it auditory, they'll get it kinetically, they'll feel it in their body. Any of those sensory ways of bringing in another perspective or another avenue of communication, at least in the way that I've been taught or brought into it, it is about bringing in another dimension, whether that's using another part of your brain initially, and then you can bring in more.
Sometimes for me, it seems like I have a knowing, and the knowing is quite filled with images, but they're not quite images, right? It's almost like a knowing of an image, or a knowing of a smell or color, but it's not with my five senses here in the third dimension. It's another kind of experience. And the other thing that comes to my mind when I say that is it leaves a lot open to question. When I come back into the third dimension, when I open my eyes, I could say, oh, that was bizarre, or that was nuts, or that wasn't real. And so there's also, I think there's another whole element where we have to develop a sense of trust that the information that comes is actually information that's coming, and that it's not just our mind making it up. It's not just my brain having a little field day doing monkey mind. It's not monkey mind. It's very centered and solid and real.
Yeah, and the more that you trust what is being given to you, the more that synchronicity expands in your life, right? So then you can go, oh, wow, I saw a river. And then you go across a bridge the next day that you wouldn't normally go across. And you go, oh, there's water again. It's like we tune ourselves into the messages.
Right.
And coming out of that and saying, okay, now I'm in the 3D. What do I do with that? There is always going to be an element of truth in whatever was shown to you. It's going to be for you to initially open the door, open the portal for that communication to start to happen. And if you think of just a communication or a relationship, somebody tells you something and you shut them down, what will happen? They'll leave, right? It's like, why bother? Right. So when you can find something that you can resonate with in the messages, and at least initially, then you're developing more of a trust, not only within yourself, which I think is the utmost importance, is to trust yourself of what you're getting, what you're being given, but also develop whatever's going to be coming towards you. If it's another being, if it's another part of you, if whatever is coming towards you, there's more of a trust, or at least valuing that what has been given to you, to look at it further. Wonder what that means, not just dismissing it. I don't understand. They showed me a shoe. I don't understand. So you watch the synchronicity, you watch the dreamscapes, you put yourself out there so that whatever you're in this, because you're learning a new language.
Right.
Basically.
And I think I really want to emphasize that sometimes it takes a bit of practice. I know a little bit about neurobiology. And so when we're in this waking moment, we're in a brainwave state called beta or high beta.
Right.
And we have to literally move our brainwave state down through alpha, through those two betas, through alpha down into theta. And it takes some practice. I've met many people who say, oh, I can't meditate. Oh, I can't quiet my mind. And it's not true. Everyone can quiet their mind. It just might not happen the first 10 times you try it. It's something that you have to keep having an investment in and keep trusting that even if you don't get anything, even if nothing appears, that this is still really good for you. And it's so good for you, even if you're not trying to be multidimensional, even if you're just wanting to lower your heart rate or lower your blood pressure. There's a million studies about how this practice of becoming quiet is exceptional. And so I just want to give everybody kind of a little nudge, like, don't give up too quickly. Just keep at it. Set a timer. Do it for 3 minutes. Do it for 3 minutes for a week, and then go to 5. Go to 5, then go to 7, and then, forget the timer after 15 minutes and just have a blast. It is like a tool that needs to get developed, like practice. You can't sit down at the piano and just play the piano. And the first 55 times you play the piano, you might, do chopsticks, and then you learn more, right?
When I first started this, my kids were all little. They were all under the age of 5. And so I read a book. I don't even know what it was called. It was some kind of little paperback thing that talked about going into the alpha state. It was in the 80s. I was fascinated by it. I mean, I was always fascinated by what is out there that I don't see, right? Or that I feel, but I don't see. And I spent months like saying, okay, the kids are in bed, or they're all down for a nap. Let me go and, let me go sit on the sofa, or let me lay down here and I would fall asleep over and over and over. And I remember one day that my mother was watching the children and I didn't feel tired. And I was like, oh, this is really good. I sat down. There's a big thing in between sitting down and laying down. Laying down usually does not work. sitting down, and within, I would say, there wasn't a technique for me, but I believe people can do that. They can breathe into it. They can let go. You have to reach that state where you're almost asleep, right? You just calmed yourself down enough that everything's relaxed, your jaw's relaxed, you're not thinking about anything. And what I found was like I was zoomed through the universe. Like that was my first experience of going, whoa, and don't open your eyes if that happens. Just go with it. See what you see, notice what you notice, and that was a moving experience for me, because I really felt things whizzing past me. There was faces, there was a lot happening. And as I was propelled through that, I ended up landing in a place that there was a large tree that was an oak tree that was in the distance. And I was walking to that oak tree in a green field. There was a ladder that was up on the oak tree, and there was 3 rungs, and 1 rung was missing. I looked at that as a vision. Well, that's interesting. And a voice came out of that space and said, you were supposed to have 4 children, but you will only have 3. And I had 3. And it was shortly after that my husband left, and there was a divorce that ensued. And so that was a meaningful, it was not only my first experience, but it was a breakthrough of listening and trusting that I didn't know. Like in that moment, nothing was happening. It was a very sudden breakup, right? And when that happened, and I looked back on it and I go, wow, I was told something that I didn't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a spectacular story. I really appreciate hearing it. It really does strike me that some people end up frightened when they start zooming through the universe or some other experience.
Right.
And that if we could kind of give people permission to just be curious, to just practice curiosity, to just stay open to what's going to happen next. Like opening your eyes it's your fail-safe back door, end it all. Like if I don't like what's happening, I could just open my eyes. So
Yes.
let that be like something that but you don't utilize unless you really are really terrified, right? Like unless something peculiar is happening, which usually people get frightened just because it's unknown, because they haven't experienced it before. It's not really, monster. So it's just unusual. And so we get frightened when we don't already know about something. If something happens that's multidimensional, extraterrestrial, out of this ordinary 3rd dimensional realm, it brings on fear. And just remain curious. Just be like, oh, look at that. Isn't that interesting? Oh, that's different. Right. And kind of know that you can open your eyes, but don't do it. Just keep your eyes shut.
Don't do it. The other thing is, when fear hits in these places of dimensionality, in these places of accessing it, soon as you're into fear, it severs it pretty much. Right. It's the energy of fear keeps you out of that curious state of the quantum physics. It keeps you out of the wonderment. Right. It keeps you out of, that connected place that could be there. So you have control here, by the way. People don't think that they do. Oh, you mean I can? So for people that I work with that bring in multidimensionals or whatever, they're looking at it like, you mean I have say in this? And it's like, yeah, if it's too much energy for you, say back it down. If it's too fast for you, say you need to slow the pace. Or I can only meet with you for 10, 15 minutes in this meditation. So, and then I have to go to work. So I need something that is with ease, right? If you're going to give me anything, give me something with at ease. Right. It's a co-creative process. It's not something that's just happening to you.
That's right. That's right. That's really good to know. Okay. So I have another question for you.
Sure.
I think the next question is, how do we own it? And I think it really is already in that explanation. Do you have anything else you want to say about how we own it?
Owning it, being part of it, inviting it in and being included in the multidimensional space. It does take practice. So meditation is one way, looking at your synchronicity, journaling, and also presenting yourself in a clear space is going to be really important, you know, because if you're bringing something new in on a regular basis with connection, the likelihood is, unless you've been doing a lot of work on yourself, the likelihood is that what you have that's here already is going to be judgmental. It's going to be, you know, it's going to have a lot of emotional baggage. So I would tell people that to make a list, if this is something you're serious about, if this is something that you know that you're being guided into, is to make a list of things in your life that are places that people and events that you may feel remorse or guilty or sorry or any of those kind of shadow kind of experiences, and make a list of that. And one of the best exercises for me and for others is the Ho'oponopono. So it's that I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And when you can come from that heartfelt space and you can address that with each thing that you have written, each person that you have written, what it does is it clears the heart space. It opens you up for what more can happen. And it really resonates on a deeper level with the multidimensionals that say to them, oh, she or he are getting ready, right? They want something more. They're willing to acknowledge and take accountability. Mm-hmm. So cleaning up the past is important. It's just as important as a meditation, because how can you bring in something when you're full?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really a good point. Yeah. How do we utilize being multidimensional?
My own experience is that I've changed considerably in utilizing it. So there's an integration. It's the same as when you're having a relationship with anyone, right? And it's long enough and it's deep enough and it resonates enough. You become part of that person. You become, you know what that person's going to say, or you're integrated enough that you feel so comfortable that you can say anything. That's what happens in the integration. So there's several beings that are on the council that, in my process of understanding and knowing them and being a mediator between several of them, or being a mediator so that I can even understand their dynamics, their gifts. And I think this is the thing, is that people need to understand that it's not just an exploration of, oh, who was I, or who am I going to be, or, you know, bringing in other parts of not even ourselves, but bringing in our guidance system in some way. That it's not just about bringing that forward. Okay. The utilization is that there's gifts there for us in this time period, for us in 3D to utilize. And the more you get to know them, the more you become part of them.
So my next question is, how does multidimensionality affect us generationally?
Well, we are all one, right? So the generational piece, we see it as generational DNA. We look at it as, okay, we're going to maintain our humanness because my grandmother's human and my great-grandmother and all of that, you know, and future, my children we're all human. And so we have that genetic understanding. Okay. But in the multidimensional place, you also have parts of yourself that may not be human. Okay. And they're still in your generational DNA. We just don't recognize it. So it's bringing that forward. Like there is a being, it's a blue avian. And when I first met him, you know, he was a little different. He's very tall and he does look like an avian. And his communication skill is not through the language, but more through telepathy, which a lot of multidimensionals rather use that because their language is different, or they just don't use language, you know. But I found out down the line after meeting him that he is a future great grandparent of who I will be in the future. So it brings it in from all levels, and it affects us generationally. Because if I learn something about me, if I take on something about me that is multidimensional, it bleeds through the generations. So even if my children don't believe it or my grandchildren don't believe it, there is an element that gets changed because I changed. And that's what I don't think people understand in the quantum physics. It's you change something over here and way down here changes.
Right.
You know? So it affects the genes, it affects the DNA, it affects the choices that we make because now there's new information.
I think we touched on it in our last session. Because we're all one,
Right.
you know, what happens on planet Earth is going to have a huge impact on the rest of, you know, the universes, and that it's not, we're
It's
not
the
having
ripple.
any, right. The ripple
Yeah.
is throughout all time and space in every direction. Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense to me that it would have to affect us generationally. It would have to affect us.
Right.
If it's really true that I can have a conversation with my past self, I think there have been times that I wouldn't have made it through if I wasn't currently now giving myself a lot of encouragement for what I remember I went through. When I was actually going through it, I might have not realized it, but I was being uplifted at that time
Mhm.
by my future self, which is my current self now. I mean, I get that's a kind of a loop our brain has to wrap around, but it's an important one.
Well, and it's part of the clearing too. I mean, each one of us has a story of our past. And then there's multidimensionality, right? So we have from the time we were conceived all the way up to whatever age we are. Going back to the Ho'oponopono, that's another place that I find in being a medical intuitive is that our bodies separate from us in our consciousness. And then we end up with having discrepancies of what our choices are. So our brain says one thing and our body resists. So that Ho'oponopono place of being, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you, is another avenue in taking a look at if there was any abuse, if there was any surgeries, if there were any things that happened to you physically in this lifetime. Because most likely it's related to some other lifetime. So why not clear it here, right? So you do that bondedness with the body again, so that whatever you're dealing with, an illness or something that's going to come, you have more of an understanding, a connection. You're blended with your body if there's been any separation. It's a good place to start.
Sounds great. It's such a beautiful place to start. So how about one last question? Do we have time for one more?
I think so.
Do we have more freedom when we address our multidimensionality?
You have all the freedom because you're not tied into this box of this is who I am. I've never existed before. I will never exist. You know, when I take my last breath, that's it. You have all the wisdom. You have all the potential. You have all the connection, you know, of whatever comes to you, because say you've lived 100 times, right? Or more, you know, many of us have lived a lot longer than that, or a lot more lifetimes than that. There's only going to be significant ones that relate to this particular lifetime. You're not going to have to go through all that. You know, it's overwhelming to say crazy, right? And it's never ending. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to explore that. You only want what comes to you that is going to affect this lifetime in a positive way. And if there's anything negative, right, then you need to clear that, clear it or integrate it. Ask the question again, because I don't know if I answered it.
Do we have more freedom when we address our multidimensionality?
Yeah, so you have access to many more parts of yourself, right? Or information or your guidance system, where you don't have to ask somebody, should I do this or shouldn't I do that? You know, even using the word shouldn't even be there. When you start to develop something and you trust yourself more and you get more information and you know that you exist on other levels, even the thought of death and dying becomes much different.
I agree.
And knowing that you have choice. So part of working with the beings that I work with is that they're addressing karma in a way to alleviate it for some people, because we don't want to be in that loop. We want to forgive. We want to be in gratitude. We want to let go of the past so that we really are much cleaner to create a future in a different capacity. to create that shift that everybody's talking about.
Hmm.
So it does give you more freedom in thought and word and deed.
It feels more spacious, and freedom and space sometimes are, similar words, but to me, it just opens up the space. Like there's just so many more possibilities of all kinds of different answers and supports, much more space.
Well, that's why this is called expansion from within.
Nice tie-in. I love it. All right. Well, I think that's enough for today. And thank you
Yes.
all for joining us. And we'll be back again soon.
Yep. Have a great day, week, month. It's all good. Thanks, Melissa.